For many years, viewers of the incredible Dr. Pol were captivated not just by the animals he cared for, but also by his unwavering determination, profound wisdom, charming Dutch demeanor, and profound affection for each and every one that passed through his medical practice. However, matters began to shift. Someone hurt Dr. Pol. Can you tell me what transpired on that tragic day? If you stick around to the conclusion of the video, you'll find out the truth and also see why the incredible doctor may be the only veterinarian the world has ever seen. Pol. Like a good narrative, the rise and fall of Dr. Pol Jan Harm Pol isn't static. It develops, changes, and surprises you at every stage. The peaceful Dutch village of Wateren welcomed him into this world on September 4, 1942, amid verdant fields, the sound of barn doors, and the soft mooing of cows as the sun rose. Being the sixth kid in his family meant that he had a lot of responsibilities, including helping out around the house and playing with animals, as he was the youngest. The dairy farm his family owned was more than simply a dwelling. It was also a school for life lessons, an early introduction to responsibility, and a center of activity for all kinds of animals, from pigs and lambs to chickens and dairy cows. This farm was the birthplace of Jan Harm's, now more commonly recognized as Dr. Pol, lifetime interest. A sow needed assistance giving birth to her piglets, and he was only 12 years old when he was born. With that, he rose to his feet. Think about it. He was only a teenager, yet he was in the thick of something that would change his life forever. Something was sown by that singular encounter. The little lad who brought piglets into the world would go on to become a famous figure. Who would have thought? What if everything you've worked for your whole life may come crashing down in an instant? Dr. Pol experienced just that. The man we all admired fell from grace after a single terrible accident. Removed from the limelight. But how did that day really unfold? Had there something more to do with it than just bad luck? You will be left stunned by the truth behind this accident, so stick with us. After some time had passed, in 1961, an unforeseen turn of events occurred. Pol ended up in Mayville, Michigan, thanks to an exchange program at his high school. No one could have foreseen how pivotal that year spent in America would turn out to be, and it wasn't only due to the novelty, the exposure, or even the rural lifestyle that brought back memories of his childhood, but more importantly, it was there that he met Diane Dalrymple, the young woman who would go on to become his wife and best friend for the rest of his life. Pol enrolled at the prestigious Utrecht University upon his return to the Netherlands. It was no easy task, but in 1970 he finally accomplished his lifelong dream of becoming a veterinarian by earning a degree in the field. The plot changed again in 1971. Returning to the U.S. this time, he was determined to establish a job and a family, rather than merely exploring the world. Harbor Beach was their new home. Dr. Pol spent the following decade in Michigan, where he worked exclusively with big farm animals as a veterinarian. He was familiar with this type of medicine, but the job was unglamorous and the hours were long. He had no problem getting his hands dirty in the fields tending to the livestock that powered rural America. Pol and Diane had been working for another company for several years when they decided to take a risk. They relocated to Weidman, Michigan in 1981. It wasn't exactly easy to launch a new company when loan rates were about 20%. However, they persisted anyhow. Their beginnings were modest, indeed modest. Initially, they set up shop in a makeshift space they carved out of the corner of their garage. Yes, it's just one room. Nothing but determination, expertise, and a resolve to outwork everyone else. No gimmicks or showy displays required. Is it feasible to operate a veterinary practice out of someone's garage? However, that was their method. Pol Veterinary Services, their practice, started to expand over time. They gained the respect of their neighbors little by little. They finally managed to buy the land next door and put up a double-wide trailer to use as the clinic. They owned it even though it wasn't much. It is possible that trailer did not. Looked great from the outside, but the action going on within was just astounding. Dr. Pol used to devote the vast majority of his time and energy to studying dairy cattle. What about the remaining 20%? Anyone in need, whether it be horses, dogs, cats, or anyone else, was helped. Over time, though, the scales turned. Dr. Pol adapted as the rural environment of Michigan transformed and family farms disappeared. That's his strong suit. He's realistic and unassuming. Even if his approach to veterinary care isn't always up to par, it gets the job done. Common sense veterinary medicine is what he refers to here. The care was simple and based on what he had learnt in the 1970s. There was no frills or superfluous therapies. A veterinarian's job description should include serving the clients, according to Dr. So Pol said once. Truthfulness, perseverance, and treating others with the respect he would like to receive were important to him. I could see it. In the 40 years that followed, his little garage practice expanded into a massive enterprise, providing care to hundreds of thousands of animals and serving over 25,000 clients. Isn't that amazing? He went from seeing a single patient in his garage to thousands of people across Michigan. The most remarkable thing, though, is that Dr. Pol never lost sight of his roots, even as his practice expanded and his reputation spread across the nation. Boardrooms were not his place of employment. Still making farm calls and waking up before dawn to cure sick cows or help a goat give birth, he remained firmly planted in his rural neighborhood. Even when he achieved fame, he remained the same. Still at his core, he was and is just your average Dutch farm boy, hardworking, honest, and devoted to the people and animals in his life. It all started with a son who thought his dad was special, not a Hollywood studio or a marketing campaign, but with a quiet, small-town veterinarian in Weidman, Michigan named the incredible Dr. Pol, and his meteoric rise to fame as a beloved national television personality. Dr. Pol's son Charles Pol, who left a profession in veterinary medicine to become an actor, was the catalyst. While Charles was employed, whilst he was in Los Angeles at Nickelodeon, mingling with producers and proposing reality show concepts, he received advice that would have a profound impact. Discover a character who is larger than life. Suddenly, a realization clicked in his head. My father is the largest character I have ever met in my life, he informed his companions, as he would later explain. He was telling the truth. The intense, dramatic, unpredictable, and emotionally charged nature of his dad's job made it ideal for an engrossing television series. Can you tell me what Charles did? He didn't sit around hoping that a studio would suddenly recognize his dad's talent. In 2010, he rounded up a tiny crew consisting of 2 friends and a cameraman, and they returned to their hometown to film the pilot episode. As usual, the no-nonsense, hands-on vet, Dr. Pol, had a clear memory of that moment. He was accompanied by 2 companions and a videographer, he declared. They recorded as much as they could throughout. Only 1 week in May, filming an incredible 27 hours of footage. A meticulously prepared 4-minute pitch DVD was crafted from all that footage. In addition, guess what? That was successful. The folks at National Geographic Wild were impressed by that little clip. They noticed more than simply a liking for it. They recognized its potential. A production crew was dispatched to Weidman not long after, and in an instant, the cogs of a very larger machine started to turn. But we must admit that the most brilliant ideas might fail miserably if they fail to resonate with the target audiences. So what was it about the incredible Dr. Pol that captivated audiences across the nation and beyond? How did this unscripted series featuring a no-frills vet, late-night emergency visits, and farm animals achieve such phenomenal success? An easy-to-understand but potent solution, says Charles, is nostalgia. It's a picture of childhood that many people long for, even if they weren't there, he said. Observing someone who was willing to get their hands filthy or stay up all night to save an animal's life was reassuring and centered. Nothing on the show was staged, as Dr. Pol himself made extremely apparent from the start. Our work with animals is directly reflected in what you see. The camera doesn't see a thing. It was his firm belief. At a period when much reality TV felt scripted, that level of openness was unusual. The show felt surprisingly grounded because of his attitude. Life unfolded before your eyes, not a stage production. People of all ages could relate to the show's genuineness. The series was clearly more than simply a moderate hit, according to the stats. 7.5 times the average was achieved by April 2025. Popularity among American viewers, ranking it at number 86 out of all television programs. Envision a series about a country vet that defies expectations and succeeds where expensive dramas and comedies have failed. No, the show did more than that. It taught. Students in groups like Future Farmers of America, FFA, and others around the nation started seeing these occurrences as a way to learn about large animal medicine in the classroom. These were more than just inspiring tales. They were actual case studies that showed young people, particularly in rural areas, the importance of animal care. Isn't it amazing when a show has the power to make you feel something and also educate you? However, an enormous amount of effort went into producing each polished 40-minute episode. Shooting the scene was a demanding ordeal. The crew would spend a week filming one episode, which equates to around 100 hours of material. This was not an occasional occurrence. Rather, it occurred for almost 8 months annually. Shots of Dr. Nothing about shooting Pol seemed typical of a studio comedy or even a travel documentary. The veterinary work that was going on at the time was fast-paced and frequently chaotic. The guy skipped the part where the cameras were prepared. Someone on the crew confessed, "We've learned to always be on our toes since Dr. Pol is too busy to wait for us." In order to stay up, they even devised a system where every member of the team wore a GPS tracker on their smartphone. Alongside him. Surprisingly, out of all the patients seen at the clinic, only approximately 10% were broadcast. While safeguarding the privacy of clients and their animals, the production team had to strike a fine balance by choosing captivating and educative stories. Innumerable hours were devoted to reviewing film, selecting crucial moments, cutting them down, and assembling them in a manner that retained an authentic and natural flow. Not an easy task. So maybe the last thing to ask is, isn't it comforting to see someone just be themselves in a world where everything seems staged or overly perfect? Competently and empathetically carry out their duties? Dr. Pol never intended to become famous. He merely wished to aid creatures in need. Everyone across the world now knows Charles and his story, as well as the stories of every dog, pig, cow, and horse he has ever cared for, because of his vision. And new, less desirable demands began to seep in as the cameras continued filming and expectations grew. And that's when things start to change in the plot. To put it simply, what transpired in the background? The conflict was unique, to say the least. Definitely one to stay for. The charming world of the incredible Dr. Pol, where farm animals were helped, owners were consoled, and viewers were treated to wholesome entertainment, was actually hiding a storm that had been building for some time, even before the show premiered. Veterinarians were more worried as they watched Dr. Jan Pol cure a variety of animals, from cows with twisted stomachs to dogs with broken legs, while millions of viewers cheered him on. Because what they witnessed on television was not just unusual, but intolerable, in their opinion. Concern and skepticism among many vets were high right from the start. They were equally forthright. The medical procedures employed by Dr. Pol were deemed unforgivable, appalling, and atrocious by some. When did you last hear a professional criticize another in such a manner? What they perceived as a significant misrepresentation of adequate veterinary care was at the heart of the conflict, rather than minor animosity or territorial disputes. The critics said that the show's depiction of farm medicine, albeit entertaining, could normalize harmful and outmoded practices. Among the most outspoken detractors, Dr. No, Eden Myers didn't keep her displeasure a secret. She went public with her demands for the show's cancellation through a campaign, a petition, and a Facebook page. Just think of the level of emotion required to launch such a movement. And she wasn't the only one. Veterinarians and other healthcare professionals from around the nation spoke out on online discussion groups, warning of what they saw as potentially harmful trends in the media. In light of this, how did the show react? Network Nat Geo Wild, which produced the incredible Dr. Pol, supported its star. They said he had saved thousands of animals over the course of his 40-plus-year career as a veterinarian who put a common-sense approach to veterinary medicine into practice. To be fair, a lot of people saw Dr. Pol as just that, a country vet with little frills who knew how to get the job done. The public's approval of the network didn't stop the criticism either. To the contrary, it continued to gain steam. Problems with the law subsequently arose. for the simple reason that the law is frequently quick to intervene when public pressure meets professional misbehavior. A major shift occurred in 2012. Dr. Pol was placed on probation by the state authorities of Michigan. For what reason? Tragically, he was involved in a case in 2010 involving a pregnant dog whose babies died while in his care. It was described as carelessness by regulators. Additionally, that was not a unique instance. And more case surfaced in 2014. The victim this time was a Boston Terrier, which was struck by a car. IMDR. Officials claim that Pol conducted the procedure without donning the appropriate surgical gown or utilizing the necessary monitoring equipment. That is to say, in their view, processes that are vital according to current veterinary standards were disregarded. But the legal processes continued. Dr. Pol was reprobationed in 2019 for 2 distinct counts of alleged carelessness after the Michigan Court of Appeals affirmed an earlier decision. He had reached the ripe old age of 77. His defense attorneys disagreed, claiming the veterinary board in Michigan had acted arbitrarily and unfairly. The strain was building, though, and it didn't matter if you thought Dr. Pol was unfairly punished or not. Expenditures and emotional energy are both drained by protracted legal disputes. Perceptions are changed by them. That kind of scrutiny may linger, especially for a show that revolves around the reputation of a single individual. Can a well-loved public figure serve as an inspiration to some while serving as a warning to others? This is the nagging dilemma that keeps popping up. The affable and charming Dr. Pol became somewhat controversial in the veterinary field, despite his charming and pleasant movie persona. Some saw in him a symbol of age-old knowledge, practical wisdom, and tradition. To some, he represented all that contemporary veterinary medicine has sought to dismantle. However, what few people discuss is the true background behind all of this. What the compliments, criticism, and stress meant to him on an individual level. Because his career wasn't the only thing that took a hit when a personal tragedy struck. His soul was at stake. Despite being inaudible on film, the subsequent emotional toll was substantial. And shortly, we will delve into an aspect of Dr. Pol that is seldom shown. Stay a while. Tragic family tragedy leaves fans reeling. The Pol family, who gained fame thanks to the hit TV show The Incredible Dr. Pol, has been through more than its share of misfortune, suffering away from the spotlight of fame and the spotlight of production. While Dr. Pol's television celebrity has brought many joys and successes, it has also brought unexpected moments of profound personal tragedy. A tragic event occurred in February 2016 that was very near to home for Dr. Gregory Scott Butch and his family. Kathleen, Pol's dear daughter, died after a long and difficult fight with cancer. The loss of a son-in-law is a terrible experience for any parent, but for Dr. Pol and his wife Diane, it was the loss of a beloved family member with whom they had celebrated birthdays, shared Sunday dinners, had quiet conversations, and made innumerable memories. After someone who used to make everyone laugh leaves, the room can feel incredibly quiet, doesn't it? Tragically, life threw them yet another setback while they were still attempting to recover. Catastrophic hit. Adam James Butch, their grandchild, passing away unexpectedly at the young age of 23 in September 2019, came barely 3 years after Gregory's loss. His untimely demise was shocking, and terribly upsetting. Something as nebulous as it defies explanation. What words can one use to express the anguish of losing a young man who has not yet had the opportunity to completely embrace his future? Adam was an inspiration. He was compassionate, passionate, and full of possibilities. His involvement in health education and his work with adolescents demonstrated the compassion that seems to be inherited from his family. Everyone in the Pol family was rocked to their very core by his death, but maybe no one felt the loss more profoundly than Dr. Pol himself. As a veteran veterinarian who has seen his fair share of tragedies, Dr. Pol was known for his unflappable demeanor and pragmatic approach to dealing with mortality. However, that exterior was shattered with Adam's death. He couldn't find solace in peaceful dignity because of the type of grief he was experiencing. As an alternative, he made an unprecedented and deeply touching public confession of his grief. No amount of work experience could have prepared a guy who had devoted his life to assisting others, both animals and humans, for the anguish of losing a grandson. His normally powerful and unflinching voice now betrayed a new side to him, the sad grandfather as well as the competent doctor, to people who had followed his work for many years. Not only did getting older bring its fair share of emotional baggage, but it also presented practical and occupational hurdles. When Dr. Pol was in his 80s, the physical demands of the job that had given him meaning and fame started to outweigh what his body could sustain. Although it may appear gorgeous on screen, filming a popular TV show is actually incredibly demanding. Approximately 8 months out of the year, he was filming around 100 hours of material weekly. Beyond exhausting, it's almost beyond human capabilities. Is it feasible for anyone to sustain such a regimen permanently? His speed naturally decreased as the years passed him by. He had, after all, spent decades tending to the needs of pet owners and their animals. It was a profession that tested one's mental and physical fortitude via long hours of patient care and constant exposure to the unexpected. However, nobody is immune to harm. The difficulty of meeting production deadlines increased as he got older. What was once a few hours' work could now take an entire day. Everyone from producers to crew members had to find a way to accommodate his cadence, and the tale itself had to change. Now it was more about following the story of a man who had dedicated his life to helping others and was now confronted with the same cruel fate that befalls all of us. It was no longer about demonstrating procedures and easy solutions. Everyone can relate to that, can't they? The sensation of time passing more slowly, of having to prioritize what's most important with the resources you have? Even though he was in so much pain, had such a heavy schedule, and was grieving a loss, Dr. Pol stayed dedicated to his patients and to the people who watched his show and found solace, joy, and even motivation in it. Despite the show's lengthy and fruitful run, the horrible catastrophe that terminated it was always there, something that neither fans nor the crew of the incredible Dr. Pol ever really paid attention to. The continual fear for one's safety, the scenes endured day after day. How risky is it to film a veterinary show, you may ask? The people who worked on it, though, will attest that it wasn't all about documenting adorable animals or incredible healings. Being inches away with massive, unpredictable farm animals, many of which were in distress or outright terrified, presented genuine, frequently disregarded dangers. Those in the know about the production say that safety was an early and ongoing issue. Dr. Pol and his colleagues were filmed as they dealt with challenging births and emergency surgeries in various locations, including barns, fields, and even ditches by the side of the road. A different story was unfolding behind the scenes, even while the show praised Dr. Pol for his distinct old-school manner and no-nonsense approach to medicine. The camera crew, the majority of whom had proper training in animal handling, was continually put in danger. They frequently found themselves perilously near bucking horns, kicking hooves, and, more than once, terrified animals attempting to flee. Even the crew worker who remarked, "We're just as likely to get trampled as the vet," got in on the action. Things became quite scary, though, and the jokes ended. A normal shoot with beef cattle was the scene of the most serious occurrence. It was going to be routine, following Dr. Bring Pol onto the field, but the squad will never be the same after what transpired. An angry and unrestrained beef cow bolted out of control, slamming full force into a crew worker. We've had a few near misses with the crew, but the most dangerous was probably when one crew member got run down by a beef cow, a production insider recounted, obviously still traumatized by the incident. The loss of the accident tape further ensured that the event would never have aired. Because of this, the majority of viewers were unaware of the gravity of the risks faced by those working behind the scenes. It wasn't an isolated instance, either. There were numerous instances where the crew's safety was in jeopardy. Once, a 300-pound calf bolted free and flipped over a crew member by running beneath them. A huge bull that was being castrated broke a barn post in half in another incident. Another incident had an alpaca that almost broke a camera lens when it kicked at it. Notable incidents also included frightened cows leaping over fences and rupturing steel cages, as well as a 200-pound bloodhound viciously attacking its owner, resulting in stitches. Was required. Everyone engaged realized these were not uncommon occurrences, but rather integral components of the job. Therefore, how came no one in the audience was aware of this? Because the show's editing downplayed the actual risks, blood, and bruises that come with filming rural veterinarian practice in favor of its more interesting, touching, and occasionally humorous aspects. However, the team claims that the actual situation was considerably more dramatic than what the viewers witnessed. Scenes from The Incredible Dr. Police are really dangerous, one member of staff stated. We're not merely playing a TV game with them. The show's airing network, National Geographic Wild, could no longer turn a blind eye to the mounting number of these instances. In private, people started talking about whether or not the show could stay on air. Secretly, the network's upper echelons began an exhaustive internal investigation of all safety protocols, incident reports, and growing concerns. Their findings were concerning. Concerns over the crew's safety weren't the only ones that went up. Even though he's in his twilight years today, Dr. Pol still had all the vigor and enthusiasm he had when he first started wrestling pigs 20 years ago. On top of that, there has been an increase in the volume of criticism from certain quarters of the veterinary community. There were some in the medical field who voiced their disapproval of the on-air procedures, while others were worried about the absence of safety gear. Precautions to take in order to protect the people and the animals. Production hazards, an aging cast, criticism from inside the business, increasing insurance costs, and even a small change in what spectators were watching all started to pile up. With much deliberation, the network finally took the tough call. Dr. Pol, The Incredible, would end. Obviously, we didn't take this choice lightly. Dr. Pol had done his bit by strictly following safety protocols, doing his utmost to ensure the crew's well-being regardless of the circumstances. Those regulations had, to be honest, served to prevent more catastrophic injuries for a long time. However, there are instances when the inherent, unexpected character of the activity makes any amount of preparation useless. While pursuing excellent television, it is easy to lose sight of the fact that the decision was ultimately about protecting people. The show may have ended, but its influence will live on. We have reached the final segment of this video. I appreciate you tuning in. Please hit the like, comment, and subscribe button if you found this video entertaining. Click the video that appears on your screen right now to see more exciting stories.